The Viking Wars, 793 to 1066 AD. The age of the Northmen. They came from the sea like wolves, their sails black as night, and for 3 centuries the world trembled. Between 793 and 1066 AD, the Norsemen, known to history as the Vikings, waged wars that reshaped Europe. From the frozen fjords of Scandinavia, they erupted into the world with axes, oaths, and unshakable will. They raided kingdoms, toppled empires, founded cities, and left behind a legacy that would echo for 1,000 years. This is the story of the Viking Wars, not just of conquest and blood, but of transformation. How a people of the North changed the destiny of Europe. Chapter 1. The Land of the Northmen, before 793 AD. Long before they became legends, the Vikings were simply survivors. Scandinavia was a harsh and unforgiving land. Its soil thin, its winters endless, its beauty terrible. In the fjords of Norway, the forests of Sweden, and the plains of Denmark, tribes lived by hunting, farming, and trade. Their ships were their lifelines, built of oak, long and narrow, with shallow keels and carved dragon heads. These longships could sail rivers as easily as oceans. They were the wings of the Viking world, swift, silent, unstoppable. The Norse believed in gods of war and wisdom, Odin, Thor, Freya, and that death in battle was glory. To die with a sword in hand was to be carried to Valhalla, to feast forever in Odin's hall. This belief forged a culture where courage was life's only currency. But as populations grew and resources dwindled, the sea called them outward, not just to raid, but to survive. What began as exploration would become an age of conquest. Chapter 2. The First Strike, Lindisfarne, 793 AD. In the year 793, the world changed. Off the coast of Northumbria, in England, stood Lindisfarne, a small island monastery, peaceful, wholly unarmed. One June morning, longships appeared on the horizon. Before the monks could flee, the Norsemen came ashore. They slaughtered the unarmed brothers, looted the golden chalices, and carried away captives. The monks described them as heathen men, fierce, hairy, and without mercy. For the first time, Christian Europe looked north and saw not traitors, but terror. The Viking Age had begun, but Lindisfarne was not random. It was a message, a signal that the North had awakened, and no kingdom was beyond its reach. Chapter 3. Raids turned to war, 800–850 AD. After Lindisfarne, the Viking raids multiplied like storm waves. They struck Ireland, Scotland, France, the Netherlands, even Spain and Italy. No coast was safe. The Franks called them Northmen, Normanni, from which Normans would later come. In Ireland, they founded the first towns, Dublin, Waterford, Limerick, turning raiders into settlers. In France, they sailed up the Seine River, plundering Paris itself. Their speed was unmatched. They struck without warning, vanished with the tide, and returned before kingdoms could react. Their ships glided up rivers where no army had ever sailed, but the raids were only the beginning. Soon, the Vikings were not content to take. They came to stay. Chapter 4. The Great Heathen Army, 865–878 AD. In 865 AD, the war changed forever. A massive Viking force, known in chronicles as the Great Heathen Army, landed in eastern England. Unlike the earlier raiders, this was no hit-and-run expedition. This was conquest. Led by the sons of the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok, Ivar the Boneless, Ubba, and Halfdan, the army sought vengeance for their father's death at the hands of an English king. They swept across Northumbria, capturing York and slaying its rulers. Mercia fell next. Only Wessex, the southern kingdom, held firm, led by a young and brilliant king named Alfred the Great. The Battle of Edington, 878 AD. After years of relentless war, Alfred faced Ivar's forces at Edington. The battle was fierce, shield walls crashing, axes rising and falling in the mud, but Alfred's men held, driving the Vikings back. When it was over, a treaty was signed, dividing England into two zones: Wessex, ruled by the Saxons, and Danelaw, ruled by the Danes. For the first time, the Vikings became rulers on foreign soil. England was now half Norse, half Christian, a land divided between cross and hammer. Chapter 5. The Rise of Viking Kingdoms, 889–50 AD. By the end of the 9th century, Viking power stretched across the North Sea. They ruled York, Dublin, and much of Scotland. In the east, Swedish Vikings, the Rus, sailed down the rivers of Russia, founding Novgorod and Kiev, and opening trade routes to Constantinople. There, they became mercenaries, joining the Byzantine emperor's elite Varangian guard. Meanwhile, in France, the Norse chieftain Rollo besieged Paris so relentlessly that the French king, Charles the Simple, offered him land in exchange for peace. In 911 AD, Rollo became the first Duke of Normandy, the land of the Northmen. His descendants would one day conquer England itself. In Norway, kings like Harald Fairhair unified the clans, forging the first true Norwegian kingdom. In Denmark, Harald Bluetooth converted to Christianity, blending pagan strength with royal diplomacy. The Vikings were no longer mere raiders. They were kings, diplomats, and founders of nations. Chapter 6. The Viking Expansion, 950–1000 AD. The Viking world reached its golden age in the late 10th century. They traded furs, amber, and iron from the north for silk, silver, and spices from the east. Their ships reached Greenland under Eric the Red, and even North America, where Leif Erikson, his son, set foot on a land he called Vinland, centuries before Columbus. But their greatest influence remained in Europe. They reshaped England's language, France's politics, and Russia's statehood. Wherever they went, they left behind a trail of new laws, new gods, and new blood. And yet, their age of glory was ending, because now the Northmen themselves were changing. Chapter 7. The Coming of the Cross, 960–1030 AD. The Viking gods began to fall. Christian missionaries, often from the same lands the Vikings once plundered, spread across Scandinavia. Kings saw advantage in this new faith, a bridge to the wealth and legitimacy of Christian Europe. In Denmark, Harald Bluetooth proclaimed himself a Christian king. In Norway, Olaf Tryggvason, and later St. Olaf, waged wars to convert the people, by persuasion or by the sword. And in Sweden, pagan resistance lingered, but the tide had turned. By the early 11th century, the old gods, Odin, Thor, Freya, were fading into myth. The Vikings had conquered Europe, but now Europe was conquering their hearts. Chapter 8. The Last Great Kings, 1013–1066 AD. Though the Viking spirit lived on, the wars were nearing their end. The final act would play out in England, the land they had raided for nearly 300 years. Knut the Great, 1016–1035 AD. In 1013, Sweyn Forkbeard of Denmark invaded England and seized the crown. After his death, his son Knut became king, ruling over a North Sea empire that united England, Denmark, Norway, and parts of Sweden under one throne. It was the height of Viking power, an empire built not on raids, but on governance and diplomacy. Knut ruled wisely, bringing peace and prosperity. He restored churches, codified laws, and balanced his Viking warriors with English nobles. For a time, it seemed the Norse had truly become European kings. But after his death, the empire dissolved, and England's throne once again became a prize for all. Harald Hardrada, the last Viking. In 1066, Harald Hardrada, king of Norway, the last great Viking warlord, sailed to England with a massive army. He claimed the English crown, invoking old Viking bloodlines and ambition. At Stamford Bridge, his army met that of Harald Godwinson, the Saxon king. The battle was brutal. Shield walls clashing, spears flying, swords flashing in the sun. Hardrada fought like the legends of old, but the age had passed. He was struck by an arrow to the throat, and with him, the Viking age died. 3 weeks later, another invader, William the Conqueror, descendant of Rollo of Normandy, crossed the Channel and took the crown of England. Ironically, England would still fall to the Northmen, just not the old kind. Chapter 9. The End of the Viking Age, 1066 AD and beyond. After 1066, the Viking world transformed. The Norse kingdoms embraced Christianity, trade replaced raiding, and the longships gave way to royal navies. Their descendants became kings, dukes, and crusaders. The dragon-proud ships were gone, but their spirit lived on in the nations they had forged. Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, England, Normandy, and beyond. The Viking Wars had lasted nearly 3 centuries. Wars of fire, blood, and sea. But from that chaos, Europe itself was reborn. The Norse had come to plunder, and ended up shaping the modern world. Chapter 10. Legacy of the Viking Wars. The Viking legacy is carved not only in swords, but in language, law, and myth. They brought trade to distant lands, connected civilizations, and founded cities that still stand. They inspired sagas, poetry, and exploration. They gave us words like window, sky, law, anger, and knife. They spread their blood across continents, from Ireland to Russia. They changed warfare, shipbuilding, and governance. The Viking Age ended, but the idea of the Viking never did. Their gods became legends, their raids became stories. Yet their courage, their hunger for discovery, and their will to defy the impossible still echo across time. They feared no man, no god, no sea, for they were the storm, and the storm never dies.